I fucking love events. I love events. The first event I was ever a part of or hosted was a keg party in the woods in upstate New York during high school, and I made $40, and I've just been sold ever since. So, and the mission of Splash of bringing events right to the center of the sort of the marketing mix is something that we really ascribe to at Thuzio. So thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Okay, so this is the spirit of this talk is how to get the executive you want to your event. This was the best picture of the most awesome event I could find on the internet here. Obviously, the Last Supper. We have Jesus. He's in attendance. And his selfie's being taken. So the reason I wanted to start here is I wanted everyone to sort of think about start in a place of what your perfect event is, and then try to work backwards from there. That's how I like to think about things. And most of the time, when you picture your very best event, it's not necessarily the aesthetic or the food or all of those niceties that are very, very important, but it's actually the people in the room. And really great people attract really great people. And so I would make the argument that the very first thing you need to focus on when planning a really great event is to think about who's going to be that rock star in the room that's going to draw the other folks that you would like to have in attendance. And I'm sure there's some sort of ratio here. Like if you're doing a dinner event, you might just need one rock star in that space to be able to attract 10 or 15 other people that really want to attend. If you're having hundreds of people, you might need several rock stars. But the point is I really think that you should start with asking yourself, like, how do I get those one or two really terrific people to want to attend my event so I can then, frankly, leverage them to be able to bring the other right folks into the room. And so, and by the way, like, this is really, really hard to do. As you'll see, I'm going to try and walk you through how we think about it, but it's not easy. Rock stars are busy. Rock stars get lots of different invitations. But one thing that's really consistent about all people is that their passion drives them. Everybody, even the rock stars, have something that is really important to them. And if you can figure out what that is, it's very likely that you can really convince them to follow that passion point into the room or the event that you ultimately want them to be a part of. We find that this generally comes in three different forms. People are fans of things, okay? Even rock stars, as you can see. Spike Lee, right? Like if you invite Spike Lee to a event with Kristaps Porzingis, the great the new New York Knicks center, Spike Lee's probably going to show up to that event, and Spike Lee can't stop himself from showing up to that event. And people have these passion points across a variety of different fields, as you can imagine. They might follow sports. They might follow music. You might be able to invite them to a concert or a performance. You might be able to invite them to. We just had an event last night with Josh Capon, the chef at Burger and Barrel, and all of the foodies in our membership community decided to come that night. So if you can figure out what they are a fan of, it's very likely you can create some bait to bring them into that room. And I should stop and also mention that figuring this out for the rock stars that you're trying to attract, not easy either. Good news is there's tools available to you. There's things like Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter where you can get an idea of what people are interested in. But oftentimes you're just going to end up having to network into somebody who knows that person really well. It might be an assistant, might be a friend, might be that some other connection point. But ultimately you have to figure out what that passion point is. Perhaps they're a fan of something. I see this firsthand every day. My co-founder is Tiki Barber, who's a professional, used to be a professional football player. And so I can get a meeting with any Giants fan in New York. Easily, I'll just tell them Tiki's coming. They let me into their office. I had a meeting with major consulting companies, head of sponsorship 2 days ago. Had no business meeting with me, but he did because Tiki came along. So I see this proven every day. Now another driver here. This doesn't show up real well, but this is Leo and Sly Stallone, as you can see. And I thought Leo was a good example. A cause is very important to him. So again, you have fan first, and then you have a cause. And a cause can be a great way to establish a connection with someone that you're trying to attract into your event. People have, many important people have foundations that either they are directly running or a significant part of, or they have foundations that are just near and dear to them. And if you can, again, figure out what causes drive a rock star, it's very likely that you can create a relationship with them based on that cause. And the third driver, I would argue, is exposure. And this really taps into people's self. So an example of this is we put on quite a few events with celebrities and influencers. And what I've come to realize is that if I can figure out what publication that celebrity or influencer wants to be in, and I can get that publication to attend our event and talk about that event, it is very likely the celebrity or influencer will attend that event. An example of that is professional athletes right now are really, I think LeBron kind of led this, but they are very focused on being known for their business endeavors. That's what's cool to them, not just being a great athlete, but also like being a great entrepreneur, having their own venture capital firm, making investments, so on and so forth. And so if you can bring Forbes to an event to do a profile on an athlete, it's very likely that the athlete will show up. So that's one example. I think media exposure is really important. Another idea that I love, we have a sister company at Thuzio called Julius, which is an influencer marketing software company. And the CEO there does this, is he started his own podcast. And his podcast, he invites people to join on, and they're oftentimes prospective customers or partners. And people come on a podcast because they want to expose their own brand, their who they are, to an audience whenever they get a chance, because it's important for them to grow their own brand. It's important for them to talk about whatever mission might be that they're really focused on at that time, which is oftentimes the business that they're trying to grow as well. And so if you can give people media exposure through a media outlet or through a podcast that you create on your own, these are great ways to ultimately attract the right person or rock star into an event or an environment where you can then build a relationship. This is Kermit warming his hands over a fire, and it was the warmest picture I could find on the internet. And the idea here is that at some point you're going to have to extend this invitation to the rock star that you're trying to get to your event. And I can't stress enough how important it is to work as hard as you possibly can to enter into that conversation with a warm introduction. I make this mistake all the time. I try reaching out cold because I'm anxious to sort of have the conversation that I want to have. And I think, well, I met this person once before and I have their email, so here I go. And hey, I have this event, you should come. And it's like a 0% success rate. You really have to just take the time to think about your network, think about the other people that you work with, think about your executives, think about your CEO, and how you might be able to create some warm connection point with that person that you ultimately want to bring into the room. And I got thinking about like why on the other side do they never respond? And it's because it's lazy. If I reach out to someone basically cold and ask them to come to my event, then I'm pretty much putting the work on them to figure out who I am and what I'm all about. I should have done the work up front to figure out how I can connect with them, find some rapport, establish some connection before reaching out. And so I think that this is the part where it's really, really easy to get lazy before when you're planning an event, but you just got to do the work and find a connection point so that you can connect with them prior. This is Wedding Crashers, of course. So this is like a rough analogy with this picture. I just like this picture. But this is the Lock It Up scene from Wedding Crashers. And the reason I bring this up is I think there's a real science behind how you make the request for a commitment to your event. And it's particularly important when it's a rock star that effectively is like your entertainment or your lead that's going to entice other individuals and prospects into coming into your room. Because if that rock star doesn't show up, everybody's going to be really disappointed. And so the way that you can extend an invitation, or the language you use in extending that invitation, I would suggest is highly important. And what we've found to be successful is to be relatively transparent about what's happening here. So one way to go about it would be to say, hey, I'd love for you to come to this happy hour we're doing. It'd be really cool if you stop by. And I think that's what most people do. And no one really takes that seriously. And another way to make the request for an invitation is to say, it's really important to me that you attend this event. And I know that if you accept attending this event, people are going to be really excited to see you and meet you while you're there. And so if you're going to come, please make a firm commitment, because that's going to be really important to everybody else in the room to ensure that we all have a really great occasion. And I make this same request of everyone else that's attending on this given day or night. In other words, make it a little heavy. Let people know. If you're not going to take it seriously, then don't accept. Let's find another night. So that would be my argument, is to really try to be heavy with your request. Make sure that the commitment is firm, because then once you have that firm commitment from that rock star, you can build a really nice event around that person. I wanted to introduce everyone to, just in closing here, a few different companies that I think are interesting and sort of aligned with this idea of getting the one executive you need to where you want to go. Has anyone ever heard of Array? I tried to find some new business. You have? Okay, great. Array. So Array is a really interesting company. What they're doing now is they do events. You can there's sort of two sides to it. You can be an event host, where you host people in your network. And then you can also, and that's sort of a fun thing for a host, if you're the networking type, you can bring your close business acquaintances from a particular field to a really nice dinner event and be the host and sort of moderate the evening. It's a really enjoyable experience and great for building your own network. And then on the other side of it, there are sponsors that are actually paying to be in the room that night to market to these individuals who are at the dinner table. So Array is sort of this out-of-the-box dinner solution with a target customer audience, I guess you could say. Podbean is cool. They can help you start your own podcast. The really fun thing to do that I mentioned earlier. Thuzio, look forward to talking to everybody about us later as the day goes on into the evening. And then Watsy is a fun one. Watsy is a site where you can actually make donations on other people's behalf to certain charities, which is a nice way to get people's attention as well. That's it. Thank you very much.